Hi and welcome to my channel. Today I'd like to share with you a composition curriculum. If you like what you see in this video, please let me know by hitting that thumbs up and red subscribe button under the screen. First, I'd like to introduce you to the curriculum that I used last year and the curriculum that we will be using this year. It is classical composition, fable stage, and narrative stage. Now, before you look at this and say, oh, I don't do classical education materials, just hold on, hear me out. You don't have to watch the whole video, but just consider it just for a second. I have two children in middle school, well, 6th and 7th grade this year, and last year, obviously, they were in 5th and 6th grade, and they are at complete opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to writing and creative writing and composition. With one of my children, this child is extremely creative. You can have this child sit down and do a 5-minute creative writing warm-up, and this child will write pages and pages and pages of beautiful stories, lots of dialogue, lots of description, lots of everything. I have another child on the other end of the spectrum. If you say, please sit down and write a 5-minute creative writing warm-up, this child will end the 5 minutes in tears with not a thing on the paper, because the whole idea of making up something is just seemingly impossible to this particular child. Both children are equally capable of coming up with very similar and extraordinary composition papers, and let me tell you why. This particular composition does not rely on the child's own imagination and creativity. So if you have a child like I have that is more analytical, is more, everything has to be lined up and just so, and very methodical, and very, very lacking in creativity, this might be for you. But let me also tell you, this curriculum works equally well with a child who is just the most creative child. Last year, I got the Fable stage. I did get the teacher's manual, the student book, and the instruction DVD, and I'll tell you why. One of the reasons why is because every winter I lose my voice because I do not do a lot of combined classes. I actually want to teach each child individually based on what their interests are, what their skill level is, and generally, historically, I have not lumped all my students together, all my children together to do combined classes. We are currently changing that, but the DVD really helped me with being able to put this in and let the children go through it, and I would save my voice. The second reason the DVD was so important to me is because when I was looking at this curriculum, and it's something that I've been looking at for years and years, but it is very pricey. I think this curriculum, depending for the whole package, which is just these 3 things, depending on where you get it, it's between $85 and $100. We do not use it as a consumable. We will use it with each child coming up. So it's a long-term investment for us. When I was looking at this online, there are example pages that you can see on the internet. And when I was looking through this, I was thinking, just for the student book, I was thinking, I can't teach this. I have no idea what they're talking about. I am math science. You want to talk about calculus, physics, stuff like that, I am good to go. You want to talk about analyzing literature? No, I can't do that. Creative writing? I could do that. Let's just sit down and make up fancy stories. This is not really that. The way this curriculum works. Okay, so the book says, the Fable stage is the first of 14 stages. In this stage, students read and imitate fables, which are short tales that usually have talking animals or other mythical elements. Fables are a good place to start your writing career. They are short, entertaining, and teach us wise lessons about life. Most importantly, fables are easy to imitate. And then it goes on and tells you why learning to imitate other good writers is very important in being able to compose good composition. Now, you might be thinking that something like this, where all they're doing is imitating another piece of writing, would actually hold back a creative student, but my creative student is thriving in this curriculum, and my not creative student and very analytical student is also thriving in this, learning how to put together a good composition. He's not having to make up his own stories. I'll go through just the very first section of the very first lesson. You can find all of these example pages online already by the publisher. So the very first story is called The Ant and the Chrysalis. It's a very cute story. If you get the DVD that goes with it, there is an instructor that reads the story. They talk about important words to define. They narrate the story themselves, and that's one of the things that the children are supposed to do. And then, for the fable stage, they are learning 3 plot components, which are recognition, reversal, and suffering. And if you don't know what those things are, you will find the teacher book and the video very, very helpful, because I did not know what those things are. I thought I did. Recognition, I can recognize things. Reversal, what is that in literature? And suffering, I didn't really see anybody suffering in this. So the first time I looked at this, I was very confused. I knew that I could not teach this. However, after watching the video from the first one, it is a snap. It is so easy. Each one of these stories has recognition, reversal, and suffering. So the children learn over and over again. They get lots of practice on how to identify these things. And so do I. So recognition is, what in the story do you recognize? In this particular story, there's an ant. Do you recognize an ant? Do you recognize a caterpillar in a chrysalis? Do you recognize the butterfly? What things in the story are things that you recognize? Reversal is when something high and mighty is brought low, or something low is raised up. So in this case, the ant starts out very high and mighty, and the chrysalis is low, or so the ant thinks. And by the end, the ant is brought low because he realizes that the chrysalis has turned into a butterfly, and so now the butterfly has been brought high, and the ant then realizes his place is more low. And then suffering at the end of the story, the ant is not physically suffering, it's kind of more of an emotional suffering when he sees that he himself is not actually free, but it is the butterfly who is more free than him, because the butterfly flew away to the top of the trees. Being able to identify these things as a plot component is important in later writing, because then the child learns how to they themselves write a plot. So they will enhance their personal composition whenever they reach higher levels of writing. Then the next part is variations. For a very creative child, variations will be a snap. All you do is you take parts of the sentence or words out of the sentence and you change them with other words. For a child who is very analytical and not creative, a thesaurus is so important. My son, who is analytical, he uses a thesaurus on this, has no problem, comes up with great variation sentences, and he's finding great success in his composition work. Then they suggest you do an outline. The outline is where you simply, and the instructor, let me grab the video again, the instructor on the video goes through it and actually draws out and teaches them how to do outlining. Now, we had finished an outlining workbook before even starting on this book, so our schedule last year was a little bit different than what's recommended in here, and that particular outline book, which I cannot find at this particular moment, was very useful, and I will put a link to it down in the description box, that whenever we open this and I'm like, oh look, it's got outlining in there, they picked this up. It was a breeze because they already had that outlining course, and it was 40 lessons, so we did 1 lesson a day, and then we started this book, which did kind of cram this book in a little bit awkwardly, but I'll let you know how we did that. And paraphrase. Now, with the paraphrase comes figures of description, and they have up here little words that I don't know how to say, but the guy in the video knows how to say them great. They're probably Latin words or something, and the first one means a vivid description of wind. For example, a cool breeze tickled its back. Another one was a vivid description of a tree, the great oak that shades the forest. The next one was a description and portrayal of a character. For example, the cocky, overconfident ant. So the children were expected to be able to write their own 3 sentences, and with the description and help of the DVD, or if you don't get the DVD, it is in the teacher book. They're able to write their figures of description and then paraphrase. And the paraphrase they take, for me, I had them take variations 1 and 2 and their outline and basically write the story in their own words based off of their outline and based off of their variations. Of course, they have variations 2 right here. And then they had to get their paraphrase corrected by me or my husband, because he's much better at spelling and grammar than I am. And then they would write their final draft in good penmanship and turn it in, and that would complete their 1 week in their composition lesson. Now, another thing that we did not do was the other ways that you would paraphrase. So you would paraphrase just with your outline, and then you could paraphrase, write the fable by inverting the sequence of events. Start with the commonplace. So the commonplace is the what was learned. So for this one, the commonplace was appearances are deceptive, and the commonplace is down here at the bottom of the little fable. So you would start with the commonplace, and you would basically write your composition backwards from the end of the story up through the beginning of the story. We did not do that. There's other ways of writing as well. So the other way that they teach is reducing. Now, my very analytical child automatically reduces everything anyway. He does not add a lot of description. He does not add a lot of flowery words. There's no bulk. There's no fluff in his writing. He automatically brings everything down to the bare bones basic of what the story's about. Now, my other child, who is very, very creative, she automatically adds loads of fluff. She can take a 1-paragraph story and turn it into pages upon pages of wonderful detail in her story. So the reducing practice really helps her to be able to rein all that in, bring all of it in, and to be able to figure out what is the bare bones basic of what this is, which is a great way to teach her how to summarize, which helps in all the other classes. That was our last year's course, and we loved it so much. I asked the kids, hey, what do you think about doing this composition again this year? My very creative child said, yeah, let's do it. And my very analytical child said, yeah, that one sounds like fun. How my child, who hates writing, loves this curriculum is beyond me, but it works, and we're doing it, and we're keeping going. And let's go on to this year with the narrative stage. This year I simply got the student book and the teacher guide. I will be totally honest with you. I was trying to cut out some things, so money-wise, so that I could make room for other things that I wanted to get this year. And the thing that I ended up cutting out was this DVD. I'm kind of on the fence. I'm thinking I might get it anyway. I might tough it out. It's not too bad. And I'm having a lot of fun actually helping them with it in the first couple weeks that we're doing. But this year we are actually doing the narrative stage over the course of 2 weeks for 1 lesson, as opposed to last year we did 1 lesson a week. We did not review the outlining workbook that I had them do last year, so we have the entire school year to be able to do just this 1 composition class. So the narrative stage is very, very similar in layout, and it actually builds on the fable stage, because with the narrative stage, and this is the student book, you will see they again have the story, and this one, the very first story in here, is about a rose and how the rose turned red. And it is a mythology story, so if you're into mythology and things like that, this will kind of play into what your children are already learning. But there are now, instead of 3, there are 9 components of narrative invention. So the 9 components of narrative invention are recognition, reversal, and suffering. Those are the same as last year. So already your kids have 3 of the 9 already knocked out because they will remember from last year and just carry on with this year. Then agents, action, time, place, manner, and cause. And if you don't know what those things are, I can't remember off the top of my head because we've only done the first lesson. They all are here in the very beginning. Components 4 through 9 of narrative invention tell the who, what, when, where, how, and why of the narrative. Students will identify them by a close reading of the narrative, asking who it is about, that's the agent, what happened, that's the action, when and where it happened, time and place, how the action is carried out, manner, and why it is written, cause. This seems very simple and straightforward to somebody who's written stories before. My very creative writing child, she automatically puts all this stuff in. But she doesn't realize she's putting this in. So this is very useful because it makes her aware of what and why of the things that she's doing. Now my analytical student, who really suffers through even trying to think about something to write about, has a guideline. It's very easy. It's a matter of checking off a list now. So that child is getting much more confident in writing, much more confident in the idea that he can write creatively. So it's just so nice to see such success from both ends of the spectrum. So again, we're back here. We see the Rose story. We see the 9 plot components, There is also a narrative. The child has to retell the story just from memory, from having read it. And we go over definitions. And then we do an outline, doing variations. Same thing we did last year, so they just have to write 3 revisions of the sentences that they're given. Very easy. Again, my creative student, she just pulls stuff out of her head. My analytical student is looking in the thesaurus, but he's also being able to just think them up now, all by himself. So it is phenomenal. Then we do a paraphrase, again with the figures of description. Description and portrayal of a character, the cocky overconfident ant. Again, that's a review of last year. A vivid representation of the earth. The lush garden of flowers and trees. Again, all of these different figures of description the children went over last year, so it's just reviewing and really firming up their understanding of what these concepts are. Along with their figures of description, they do a paraphrase from their outline and their variation. There is a paraphrase 2. This one says condense the narrative. Eliminate any unnecessary adverbs, adjectives, phrases, or clauses. Again, this is actually where my very creative student struggles in just simplifying down all the material that she has just written so beautifully. Here we have variation 2 and a final draft. So the way that I have it broken down for my students this year, it takes 2 weeks. We are doing 4 days the first week, 4 days the second week for 1 lesson. So the day 1 lesson is read, do the vocab, and then the 9 components of a narrative. Day 2 is the outline. Day 3 is variation 1. Day 4 is variation 2. Day 5 is figures of description and paraphrase 1. Day 6 is paraphrase 2. Day 7 is final draft. And day 8, they read their composition to the class. And amazingly enough, this composition class is a supplement to the composition that is in our grammar book that I already did a video on, and I will link to that. Thanks so much for watching. If this was helpful to you at all, please let me know. And if you have any questions because I left something out that you're interested in, do leave me a comment all the way at the bottom. As always, may your homeschool be a blessing. Bye-bye.